My brother forced me to fund his startup and cousin's wedding. When I refused, he turned the wedding into my trial, in front of 300 guests, and paid. I always knew Ethan would ruin something one day. I just didn't think it would be my reputation or that he'd do it in front of 300 people while wearing a rented tux and holding a stolen mic. But I should have seen it coming. I've seen the warning signs since we were teenagers. The arrogance, the deflection, the way our parents acted like every failure of his was somehow someone else's fault. Usually mine. I'm Rachel, 34, single, bakery owner, chronic overachiever according to my mom, and control freak according to Ethan. What I am, honestly, is tired. Tired of pretending our family dynamic isn't toxic. Tired of forgiving people who never apologize. And very, very tired of Ethan showing up with his latest scheme and expecting me to bankroll it out of loyalty. But let me back up to the day it all exploded. It was my cousin Lydia's wedding, a classic Charleston affair dripping in Southern elegance and old money charm. White roses cascaded down spiral staircases. Jazz trio playing under a magnolia tree. Past hors d'oeuvres I couldn't pronounce. The whole thing felt like something out of Southern Living magazine if Southern Living had a category for emotional landmines disguised as family reunions. I was seated at table 6, with a view of the marsh, and just enough distance from my parents to breathe. The only reason I was even there was because Lydia and I had grown up close. She was one of the few in the family who actually supported my bakery when I started it 10 years ago in a tiny strip mall, baking out of a rented kitchen and selling scones at farmers markets. My business, Sweetbriar Bakehouse, is now one of the most sought-after custom cake shops in Charleston. I've catered for mayors, for art gallery openings, and yes, even Lydia's wedding cake, 7 tiers, all hand-painted in edible watercolor. It was my gift to her, and for a moment, standing there in my navy blue dress, glass of Prosecco in hand, I felt proud. Not just of the cake, but of how far I'd come. How I'd built something real. Something of mine. Then Ethan showed up. He breezed in late, of course, with his newest girlfriend Jade on his arm. She wore a glittery dress about 2 sizes too tight, and looked like she had stepped out of a reality show audition line. Ethan was all charm, hugs and backslaps, acting like the golden child while our parents beamed like royalty watching their heir arrive at court. He gave me that smile. The one he uses when he wants something. "Rach," he said, pulling me into a one-armed hug like we were besties. "This cake is insane. You really outdid yourself." "Thanks," I said cautiously. "Glad you like it." Then he leaned in and dropped the bomb like he was just asking me to pass the salt. "I've got a business idea. You're gonna love it. We just need a small investment from you. A couple $100,000. I blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" He grinned like it was a joke. "I'll explain later. Let's find a quiet spot." "No," I said firmly. "You can explain it now." He chuckled and looked around, as if the concept of being told no was foreign. "Come on, don't be like that. This is a game changer. Jade and I are working with some guys from Atlanta. They've got this idea to combine food delivery, AI and blockchain. We're calling it BiteChain." I stared at him, mouth slightly open. "You want me to give you $250,000 for a food crypto app?" He actually had the nerve to look offended. "It's more than that. We're revolutionizing the future of dining. It's not just food, it's technology. It's a legacy. And we're family, so I figured—" "You figured wrong," I said, cutting him off. "This isn't happening, Ethan." He took a step back, blinking like he'd been slapped. "You don't even want to hear the pitch? I don't fund fantasies, I run a real business. You should try it sometime." That should have been the end of it. A simple rejection. But Ethan doesn't reject it. He retaliates. He smiled. That fake, dangerous smile he gets when he's plotting something. "You really think you're better than the rest of us now, huh? Just because you sell overpriced cupcakes to rich people?" I didn't respond. I didn't have to. My silence enraged him more than any insult could. I turned and walked away, not realizing that the next time I'd see his face it would be under the glare of a spotlight, standing at the mic during the toasts. When the DJ announced it was time for speeches, I expected the usual. The father of the bride, the best man, maybe Lydia herself. What I didn't expect was Ethan casually grabbing the mic after the groom's brother finished. "Before we all get too drunk," he said with a grin, "I just want to say a few words about family." My stomach dropped. Ethan had no role in the wedding. He wasn't a groomsman. He wasn't close to Lydia. He wasn't even invited to speak. But there he was on the mic commanding 300 people's attention. "Some people in this family," he began, "love to pretend they did everything on their own. But what they don't tell you is how much they took from the rest of us to get there. The guests tittered nervously. A few heads turned in my direction. I felt a heat rising in my neck, a prickling in my palms. "I'm talking about Rachel," Ethan said, lifting his glass. "The self-made baker. The hometown hero. Except none of it would have happened without the family recipes she stole from Grandma May, recipes that were passed down to both of us. That belongs to all of us." Murmurs rippled across the room like thunder. "And now," he continued, "she won't even invest in a real business that could lift this whole family up. Nah. She'd rather hoard her money and act like she's better than us." I was frozen. Humiliated. Exposed. My parents didn't stop him. In fact, they nodded. And across the room, one woman slowly put down her wine glass. Judge Alana Reeves. Retired, powerful, and seated just 6 feet from me. She looked at me not with pity, but with something colder. Calculation. And in that moment, I realized Ethan may have started this fire. But he had no idea who he was about to burn. There's a special kind of silence that follows betrayal, not quiet, but charged. Thick. Heavy. Like the moment before a storm when the air feels electric and the trees stop moving. That's what the room felt like after Ethan's toast. No one clapped. No one laughed. But no one stopped him either. He stood there, all smirking confidence, raising his glass like he'd just delivered a punchline. Meanwhile, I sat at table 6, ice melting in my untouched drink, staring at a man I used to call my brother. I felt my fingers shaking not out of fear, but fury. And not even because of what Ethan said. I could handle his cheap shots, his passive-aggressive jabs about success. I'd been dealing with that for years. What broke me was our parents. My mother Patricia looked proud. Not a trace of shock on her face. Just that smug little smile she wore when Ethan got away with something, like when he crashed her car at 18 and somehow I got grounded for it, or when he drained his college fund gambling and she asked if I could spot him from my bakery's emergency account. And my father? Well, he just kept sipping his bourbon like none of this was unusual, like public character assassination was part of the evening program. I took a breath, slow and steady. Judge Alana Reeves hadn't taken her eyes off me. Not in judgment, but in recognition. She knew. She knew what this was. Maybe not the whole story, but enough to see it wasn't just a toast. It was an ambush. I stood up. Not because I had something to prove to Ethan. But because I was done letting anyone speak for me. "Excuse me," I said, my voice louder than I intended. "Since apparently this is open mic night, I'll say a few words." A few gasps. One person clapped awkwardly. I took the mic from Ethan with a smile so sweet it could rot teeth. "Thanks for the introduction, little brother. Very inspiring." Ethan stepped aside, clearly not expecting me to respond. He looked rattled, just for a second. I turned to the crowd. "Hi everyone. I'm Rachel Whitmore. Some of you know me. Some of you know my cupcakes. And some of you, I guess, just found out I'm the family villain." A few nervous chuckles. I continued, voice even. "Since Ethan brought up our late Grandma May and her recipes, I'd like to set the record straight. Yes, I use some of her techniques. Everyone in this family does. But I'm the one who spent a decade perfecting those recipes. I'm the one who got up at 3 a.m. every day for 5 years. I'm the one who maxed out my credit cards, burned out ovens, ruined batches, cried over failed crusts, and kept going anyway." Jade, Ethan's girlfriend, rolled her eyes. I ignored her. "You know what Ethan did during that time? He dropped out of 2 colleges, started 4 different businesses that all failed, borrowed thousands from our parents, and never paid a cent back. And now he wants me to invest in ByteChain, his crypto food app." There were audible snorts from the crowd. At least 2 cousins shook their heads in disbelief. But when I said no politely, mind you, he decided to smear me. In public. At a wedding. Because that's what entitled people do when someone sets a boundary. My voice cracked just a little, but I held steady. And the worst part? My parents encouraged it. They always have. I didn't look at them. I didn't need to. I could feel their disapproval tightening like a noose behind me. They cheered him on when he called me greedy. When I bought my first commercial kitchen, they told me not to brag. When my bakery made the city's top 10 list, they said Ethan just needed time to shine. When I finally paid off my loans, they asked if I could buy Ethan a car. More gasps now. A few shocked glances in their direction. "So here's my toast," I said, raising my glass. To everyone in this room who's ever been told to dim their light for someone else's comfort, to every woman who worked her ass off only to be called selfish, and to every so-called family member who watched it happen and stayed silent. Then I turned to Ethan. You want to sue me for recipes? Go ahead. You'll lose. I've got copyrights, timelines, records, witnesses, and a very patient attorney. He paled slightly. And Judge Reeves, I added, turning toward her with a small smile. Thanks for your support over the years. The almond croissants were always your favorite, weren't they? She smiled, cool, sharp, and dangerous. Still are. The crowd's energy shifted instantly. Suddenly it wasn't Ethan who looked powerful. It was me. After I handed the mic back to the best man who looked like he wanted to melt into the floor, I walked off stage without another word. People avoided my eyes. A few looked stunned. One aunt clapped slowly. Lydia, bless her, rushed over and whispered, I'm so sorry. I had no idea he was going to do that. It's not your fault, I said. He's always been like this. I just never let anyone see it before. As I passed Ethan, I saw the crack in his mask, the twitch in his jaw, the desperation creeping in behind the swagger. He hadn't expected me to fight back. He never does. He thought if he humiliated me enough I'd fold. But something had broken open in me. A dam. A silence I'd held my entire adult life. I wasn't going back to that. And neither was he. 3 days after the wedding, I was elbows deep in a batch of blackberry lavender. Scones when I got served, literally. A man in a rumpled blazer walked into my bakery just after opening, asked for a lemon tart, then handed me a thick envelope with my name on it. Rachel Whitmore? He asked, as if he didn't already know. I nodded, flour on my hands, heart sinking. You've been served. My assistant Melanie, who had just started the espresso machine, froze mid-shot. Please tell me that was a prank. It wasn't. Inside the envelope? A lawsuit. Ethan was suing me for intellectual property theft, claiming I had exploited shared family heritage for personal financial gain, and owed him 49% of my business plus damages. 49%. Not 50. Just enough to control things while pretending I still had a say. The worst part. Attached to the complaint were statements from my own parents. My mother, in black ink, had written that both Rachel and Ethan grew up baking together and it was always understood the family recipes were communal property. My father added that Rachel wouldn't be successful without the family's influence. No mention of the 14-hour shifts, of the times I cried alone in my car when rent was due and the power had been shut off. No acknowledgement of the years I worked without a paycheck so I could afford one more convection oven. Just a narrative that I owed Ethan because of my family. Melanie, ever the sarcastic one, whispered, Wow. They really said, congrats on your success, now hand it over. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Because for the first time since the wedding, I felt numb. I didn't cry that night. I did something worse. I doubted myself. What if they were right? What if I had taken more than I realized? Grandma May did teach us both how to knead dough. Even if Ethan mostly played video games while I wrote recipes on index cards. Was my bakery built on stolen heritage? I sat in my dark apartment, rereading every sentence of the complaint, trying to find truth in their accusations. And then? I opened my Dropbox archive. Years of photos, emails, dated test batches, ingredient spreadsheets, and handwritten feedback notes from customers. Every single step of my bakery's evolution was documented. I wasn't just a good baker. I was meticulous. And I realized something. I had receipts. Literal ones. The next morning, I met with my lawyer, Fiona McTavish, a no-nonsense commercial litigator known for her courtroom venom and her love of black coffee with no cream. After reading the lawsuit, she looked at me over her tortoiseshell glasses and said, This is a tantrum disguised as litigation, and we're going to bury it. Are you sure? I asked. They really made it sound like I exploited the family. Fiona didn't blink. If every Southern bakery got sued every time someone used their grandma's peach cobbler recipe, half of Charleston would be bankrupt. This isn't about recipes, Rachel. This is about control. I nodded slowly. You stood up to them, she added. Now they're trying to punish you. Something in my chest cracked open. Not pain, not fear, clarity. Fiona leaned back, folding her arms. We're not settling. We're not compromising. We're going to discover. Are you good with that? I thought of Ethan's smug toast. My mother's betrayal. My father's silence. I thought of Judge Alana Reeves, who sent me a one-line text that night. If you need a witness, I'm available. I looked Fiona dead in the eye and said, let's burn the kitchen down. The pre-trial phase was brutal. Ethan's lawyer, a smooth-talking baby-face type with more Instagram followers than courtroom wins, tried to paint me as a manipulative career woman who used nostalgia for profit. He actually said I had weaponized sentimentality for capitalist gain. Meanwhile, Fiona built a case so airtight it could have survived a hurricane. We submitted recipe books dated back to 2010 with my original notes and ingredient tweaks. Bank records showing zero financial contribution from Ethan or my parents. Emails where Ethan himself referred to Sweetbriar as Rachel's thing. A signed NDA from my first investor, listing me as sole founder. Even social media posts showing Ethan mocking my bakery in its early days. And then we pulled our ace. Judge Alana Reeves submitted an affidavit. She confirmed she'd been a customer for years, had personally spoken to me about the challenges of starting a business alone, and had witnessed the outburst at the wedding. Her final line? What I saw was not a sibling dispute. It was public humiliation targeted at a successful woman by those closest to her. When Fiona read it aloud, I nearly cried. Ethan's legal team tried to backpedal. They requested mediation. They wanted a mutual resolution. But the damage was done. My story had spread from Charleston gossip circles to legal blogs to a viral TikTok someone made out of the wedding speech video. The world wasn't laughing at me anymore. They were rooting for me. A week before the court hearing, Ethan called me. Blocked number. I only picked up because I was mid-frosting and thought it might be a supplier. Rachel, he said, voice low and pitiful. Can we talk? No, I said flatly. Please. I didn't want it to go this far. You sued me. I was angry. You embarrassed me. You made me look like a joke. You did that all by yourself, Ethan. Silence. Then, if we drop the case, can you just give me a loan? I'm in debt now. Jade left. Mom and Dad are pissed. Everyone thinks I'm a scammer. I paused. I looked around my kitchen, smelled sugar and butter in the air, heard the soft ding of the oven timer. I don't think you're a scammer, I said softly. I think you're a coward who tried to steal from someone who never owed you anything. Then I hung up. The day of the hearing I wore white. Not cream, not eggshell white. The same color as the walls of my bakery. The frosting on my signature wedding cake. The apron Grandma May used to tie around my waist when I was 6 years old and helped her roll biscuit dough. I didn't wear it to be symbolic. I wore it because I wanted to remind myself, I have nothing to hide. The Charleston County Courthouse was buzzing. A handful of people I didn't recognize sat in the gallery, probably local reporters. There'd been chatter online after the wedding speech video went viral. Some TikTok influencer dubbed me, the cupcake queen who clapped back. Cute. I wasn't there for them. I was there to put Ethan's fantasy to rest, the one where he gets rewarded for showing up late, taking shortcuts and calling it innovation. Ethan arrived looking like a drowned rat in a borrowed suit. His hair was slicked back. Jade was gone. No parents in sight. Apparently, they even had the good sense to stay out of the public fallout. My lawyer Fiona leaned over and whispered, "He looks like he read the affidavit." I smiled. Hope he choked on it. The judge, not Reeves, but a quiet, sharp-eyed woman named Valerie Grant called the session to order. Ethan's lawyer went first. He spoke with affected calm, describing Ethan as a visionary, who'd been emotionally wounded by exclusion from a family legacy. He said my bakery used intellectual property passed down through generations, and Ethan, as a descendant, had a reasonable claim to joint equity. Fiona leaned over again. If he says generational trauma, I swear I'll object on grounds of TikTok terminology. Then it was our turn. Fiona opened like a lit match dropped into gasoline. Calm. Controlled. Deadly. She walked through a timeline of my business, from the day I filed for a business license to the first 5-figure catering job I booked. She introduced my ingredient logs, recipe books, and photos of me hauling flour bags twice my size. She entered into evidence an email chain from Ethan in 2017 calling my bakery, that cupcake thing. But the moment everything turned, the moment Ethan's fantasy began to crack, was during cross-examination. Fiona called Ethan to the stand. He swaggered up like he was walking onto a podcast set. "Mr. Whitmore," Fiona began, "can you describe your financial contribution to Sweetbriar Bakehouse?" I wasn't officially an investor, but... So that's a no? I supported her in other ways. Such as... He blinked. Encouragement. Advice. Emotional support. My stomach turned. Ethan wouldn't know emotional support if it came frosted with sprinkles. Did you ever write any recipes used in Sweetbriar's menu? Well, Grandma taught both of us. Please answer the question, Mr. Whitmore. Did you contribute any recipes? No. Did you ever work a shift? Bake a cake? Wash a dish? No. Did you promote the bakery? Lend your name? Connect Rachel to investors? No. Have you, at any point, referred to the bakery as Rachel's thing? He hesitated. Yeah, I guess. Would you like me to show you the email where you said that verbatim? He swallowed. No need. Fiona turned, slow and theatrical, facing the gallery. No further questions. The judge asked Ethan's lawyer if he had any witnesses. He mumbled something about family support, then asked for a short recess. They never returned. Ethan's case unraveled faster than wet fondant. That night, the judge issued a statement. Case dismissed with prejudice, which meant not only was the lawsuit dead, Ethan couldn't bring it again. It was over. I stood outside the courthouse blinking against the afternoon sun, Fiona beside me, the verdict still echoing in my chest. A few reporters hovered nearby, microphones out, waiting for me to say something. I didn't. I didn't need to. Let the judgment speak for itself. That night I went back to the bakery after hours. The shop was dark and still smelled like lemon curd and burnt sugar. I sat at my little office desk in the back, staring at the framed photo of Grandma May on the wall. She was holding a pecan pie and wearing her apron, the white one. Her eyes crinkled in that way they did when she was proud. I touched the frame lightly. I kept it mine. I whispered. And for the first time in weeks, I cried. Not because I was sad, but because I finally realized I'd won more than just a lawsuit. I'd finally broken the cycle. The next morning, a courier showed up with a small package. No sender. Inside was a slice of wedding cake in a plastic container, the one I'd made for Lydia's wedding, with a sticky note that read, "For the real recipe keeper. A fan." I smiled. Then I opened my email inbox. 15 new client requests, 3 interview invitations, and 1 message from Judge Alana Reeves. Subject: Thought you might like this. Attachment: Screenshot of a private Charleston Law Society group chat. Message: I told them you were the best baker in town. Now they all want almond croissants. 3 weeks after the court hearing, my mother called. I let it go to voicemail. She left a message, her voice soft, unsure, like someone trying to act warm in a cold room. Rachel, we were just hoping to talk. Your father's, well, we're all very upset about what happened. Ethan made some poor choices. But family's family. Maybe it's time we move on. Move on. That was rich, considering they never actually moved with me to begin with. They were always waiting at the finish line, demanding credit for a race I ran alone. The next day a letter arrived in my bakery's mailbox, handwritten. 3 pages. Ethan's handwriting. He wrote that he was sorry, that he'd messed up, that he let pressure and pride get in the way, that Jade had left him, his name was kind of blacklisted in tech circles, and he was thinking of moving back home. He ended it with, maybe we could start fresh. Maybe I could help with the bakery. I know we've had our differences, but we're still siblings, right? Right. I sat with that letter in my hands for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't get angry. I just remembered. I remembered Ethan's toast. The look on his face when he said I owed him. The way my parents nodded. They laughed from the back of the room. I remembered standing alone in that ballroom with 300 eyes on me and not one hand reaching to hold mine. I remembered the slap I never got, but felt all the same. So I placed the letter back in the envelope, returned it to the sender unopened. And for good measure, I attached a sticky note. This kitchen doesn't need another thief. That should have been the end. But karma, she likes sequels. The following Sunday, I was restocking the macaron display when Melanie ran in holding her phone, eyes wide. Rachel, you have to see this. It was a local news article. Title: Whitmore Family Bakery Scandal. What really happened behind that viral wedding speech? Apparently, someone had leaked the full transcript of the court documents. Maybe a court clerk. Maybe Fiona. Maybe Karma herself. Every detail was in there. The false claims, the wedding video, the judge's statement, even a quote from an unnamed source. I had a guess who, saying, he thought she'd fold. Instead, she baked him into a corner. It exploded online. Again. But this time, the narrative wasn't just about drama. It was about boundaries, about ownership, about Women who refuse to be robbed quietly. Messages poured in. DMs from women saying they saw themselves in me. Emails from small business owners sharing stories about relatives who tried to buy in after the hard work was done. Even a therapist messaged me asking if I'd consider being on a podcast about family betrayal. I didn't respond to most of them. But I read every word. Because for the first time in my life, I felt seen. 1 month later, the holidays arrived. The Whitmore family usually did a big thing: long table, fake harmony, matching sweaters that itched like guilt. Not this year. I got a single email from my mother. No subject line. Just one sentence. Are you really going to spend Christmas alone? I stared at it. Then I hit reply. Number, I'm spending it in peace. Then I booked a weekend cabin with Melanie and her girlfriend, made mulled wine, and watched the snow fall outside the window while we toasted to cutting ties that no longer fed us. 6 months passed. The bakery flourished. I launched a seasonal menu, opened a second location downtown, and partnered with a women's shelter to host baking workshops for survivors. At night, sometimes I stood at the window of my apartment with a glass of wine and looked out over Charleston, lights glittering like a city that had finally opened its arms to me. Not because of a scandal, but because I had finally stopped shrinking. And then, one quiet evening, it happened. A knock at the bakery door after closing. It was him. Ethan. He looked small. Not physically. But everything else about him had shrunk: the bravado, the smugness, the "I deserve this" energy. Just a man standing in the wreckage he created, hoping someone would help him sweep it up. I'm not here to fight, he said. I wanted to say it in person. I'm sorry. I didn't answer. I didn't move. He took a deep breath. You were right. About everything. I didn't build anything. I just thought, if I couldn't make something of my own, I'd take part of yours. He looked down at his shoes. But you didn't let me. And you shouldn't have. You fought harder than I ever could have. Still, I said nothing. I'm not asking for anything. He added quickly. I wanted you to know I get it now. That's all. He waited. I stared at him for a long time. Then finally I nodded once. Not forgiveness. Not reconciliation. Just acknowledgement. He nodded too. Then he left. That was the last time I saw him. Sometimes I wonder if he meant it. If he ever really got it. But most of the time, I don't wonder at all. Because I stopped needing answers from people who only show up to take. I still have the bakery. I still have peace. And I still have the recipes. Not the ones from Grandma May's old tin box. The ones I wrote by hand after burning 50 batches. The ones I perfected through 3 a.m. taste tests and small-town rejection and pure stubbornness. The ones I earned. And no one gets to take those away from me. Not anymore.